Ready?
Qui. Yep.
Qui? What is that?
Qui. I said it instead of cool earlier, so that's what I do now.
Oh.
Qui.
Oh, okay.
All right, here we go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts.
This week, we are here to talk with you about The Sparrow, sci-fi great published in 1996. It's 432 pages or 15 hours on audiobook.
And next time, we will be discussing The Mercy of Gods. Did I get that right?
The
articles? Okay.
Yeah, they're in the right order.
The new James S.A. Corey novel, which is very good and a lot different than The Expanse. But let's talk about The Sparrow.
For sure. Okay, so The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell is a first contact book with a ton of twists. So a radio astronomer discovers a signal coming from Alpha Centauri, decodes it, and realizes we're hearing aliens singing music. And while the rest of the world is transfixed by this, a Catholic sect, the Jesuits, move quickly and launch a mission to Rakhat. But we know from the beginning that the mission is doomed because a second timeline follows Emilio Sandoz, the sole survivor of the mission, back on Earth as he struggles to reconcile his very deep faith with the deaths of all the rest of his friends who he went to Rakhat with, tries to heal from his wounds and prepare to tell the world the truth of what happened on Rakhat.
Yes. And this, I think, is a fabulous novel. One of the best I've ever read.
What's
I gave
the review?
It a 5 out of 5, baby. Hard 5 from me. Doria Russell just weaves such a complex and compelling narrative. And the first contact part is interesting. It's packed with interesting sci-fi concept. And it has great characters and interesting, theology and philosophy. It's really just great ideas, great story. Yeah, hard 5.
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think it was a little slow at the beginning. The very end, I loved, the philosophical ideas she's getting us to think about here and how you deal with faith and tragedy in your life. I think those are extremely deep, interesting thoughts. Some of the foretelling stuff, I liked, and other parts I didn't like. Anyway, 4 out of 5. There's a lot I liked about it. I just didn't think it was a perfect book. But let's, there's a lot here to like, and I think I'm excited to talk about it.
Right. And first of all, trigger warning for this book for sexual violence. It's just necessary here.
Yeah, for sure. It is.
On a lighter note, this was our book club book, and the book club went off on Discord on this one. That was the best book club discussion we've ever had. So many good points of view. Placosaurus Rex even dropped a straight up Word document just on the Discord instead of writing on the Discord. It was awesome, and everyone read it. It was a 2-page, 1,000-word Word doc.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say thank you to everyone. Yes. I don't know. We started the show because we felt alone being big sci-fi, especially philosophical sci-fi nerds. And now we've all found each other. The Discord is so fun. It anyway, this was great. It was so fun talking about this with all of you. And now we get to seem extra smart this episode because we stole all your good ideas for this podcast.
And
you're welcome. Thank you.
And special shout out as well to my grandma's friend, Diana, who read this book and gave it to my grandma. And it was my grandma who said, well, have you read the sequel? And I was like, no, grandma, no, Nana, I haven't read the sequel yet, Children of God. So now I've read the sequel. So this book goes far and wide.
That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Should we talk about it?
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think
about Jesuits in space?
About Jesuits in space, yes, exactly.
Oh, were you reading off the same notes that I'm reading off of?
Yes.
Yeah, I love this idea. I love mixing theology in with science fiction, and Doria Russell does a great job, as we've said already, of doing both. And the Jesuit order is just the perfect thing to explore in science fiction because they're created. It's a Catholic order that was created to. It's a Catholic order that cares a lot about science and learning, and so it's an interesting dichotomy, the religious and the scientific and educational aspect of the Jesuits.
Yeah, I thought it was really fun. The book sparked like a fun conversation for me. I had always known that my mom went to a Jesuit college, but I hadn't like talked about that with her. You know, I don't know, the stuff that happens to your parents before you're born is just kind of like, bah, when you're growing up. But like this book, because of this book, I was like, oh, Mom, what was it like? What was it like to go to a Jesuit college? And it was really interesting talking with her. There's like a bunch of priests who she thought were so great and some who weren't so great. Yeah, I don't know. Not everyone's good at their jobs, but it was just like, it made me like, it made me appreciate a thing that I didn't know a lot about. It like helped me make connections with, you know, my mom who like had this deep personal experience with the Jesuits. Yeah. It made me think it was like a very cool thing.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, just historically responsible for a lot of the learning and protecting a lot of the knowledge, like we see in A Canticle for Leibowitz, that we have as humans. And I guess that it mostly comes from the places with money can support food and shelter and all the basic necessities, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for people to be able to learn.
Maslow. To be clear, we know it was Maslow.
Laslow. The L is right next to the M in the alphabet. That is a requirement for higher learning and exploration and pushing the boundaries of those things and protecting knowledge, like the Jesuits did in the Middle Ages, protecting books, which is what Canticle for Leibowitz is based on. So they're a really interesting combination with science fiction, and it doesn't seem obvious on the face.
Yeah, for sure. I think we should leave the philosophy aside and perhaps abandon the podcast. Would you like to open a butcher shop with me called Laslow's Hierarchy of Meats?
No, and I'm going to do my improv. No, and. And in this case, it's no, and. One of your questions on the book club was about celibacy and comparing the main character Emilio Sandoz's ideas about what celibacy does to Matthew McConaughey in Wolf of Wall Street, and I don't think that many people got that it was a joke.
Yeah, well, just they
had really interesting things to say, but
yeah, they really they talked a lot about celibacy, and they really spent a lot of time talking about jerking it in this book, and it really they were like, well, if you're having problems focusing, like, you know, you just need to go take care of that. And it was like, it's literally Matthew McConaughey's speech from Wolf of Wall Street, and just like coming out of a Jesuit priest's mouth in this book. I was just like, what's happening to me right now? Where are we? Anyway, yeah.
It's just this fantastic example of how broad this book goes, and it's just all over the map.
It's definitely the most words dedicated to celibacy of any science fiction novel. I am prepared.
Yeah.
I'm prepared to say that. It's many words, thousands.
Right. And from a female perspective, nonetheless, on male masturbation.
All right. Let's wander out of the theological jerking it woods. Yeah. What do you think about the characters?
Into Laslow. Before we get to characters, I feel like one of the main things in this book, and it was a big, a schism in the Discord about whether people liked it or not, but it's the foreshadowing. I mean, you know the end of the book at the beginning, but you don't know the whole story. And there's just so many novels like this. It's hard to pull off. I think that Doria Russell totally pulls it off. But what did you think about it?
I think it was very well done. I think that's what made that the front of the book is quite slow, but that foreshadowing was what made it work and made me willing to sit through some of the slow character backstory building, which I actually did like. I still thought the front was a little slow, but I do think it was really required to make this work. I just thought we'll talk a lot more about this in the post-spoiler section, but at the end, a lot of the reveal of the details of what goes wrong and what happens is very abrupt and quick. And it just felt like we built up to it so long. It felt like there should be a lot more depth to what really had happened. So I think it was the right choice for the book. I just wish he had stuck the landing a little bit more and just dug a little bit deeper into like the events of the ending.
I kind of disagree with you. I think that the abruptness is part of the appeal of the ending. I think that it lands and it hits, and it's just the last puzzle piece. I love this technique in books, especially when authors do it well, which I think she did here. But instead of a regular narrative arc, you're throwing in the last little puzzle piece of the mystery that goes somewhere in the middle or at the beginning, and it all comes together and just shocks you and gets you. And I thought it was fine leaving me with that to think about. Not that there's a little bit of a denouement too, but I liked it. Some people, I find there's a lot of people who just don't like broken up timeline novels, and that has always been interesting to me. We had a similar response with Dispossessed, which is just two broken up timelines. But
the Dispossessed, so both of those books, that both of your examples, I read in print, and I find them I think sometimes disconnected, whether it's points of view or disconnects in time, that kind of thing. I think maybe they're easier to read in print than they are in audiobook. That's at least my personal experience. But like I've tried to read Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks, one of the culture books.
Laslow Banks.
Yeah. I read Consider Flyboss, but I didn't really love it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try another culture book. People say these are great. And Use of Weapons does some pretty intense time switching, and I honestly couldn't do it on the audiobook. I quit a third of the way through and I was like, I need to get this one in print. So I think maybe that's part of it. I do think books require more focus when they do that. And like, I don't know, sometimes you're ready for a book that makes you focus and sometimes you're not. This book, I'd say it's philosophical for sure, but I don't think it's like in a deep focus book necessarily, because the timeline switch is so obvious every time they do it. Like it's a totally different situation. Like they're on their way to this mission versus like he's talking with his Jesuit friends in like this recovery room. And
they're kind of different. They're also kind of different stories. They matter to each other, but they're like two distinct timelines and stories, so it's a little easier to jump into, whereas something like The Dispossessed maybe has, even though they're two timelines, she's also trying to discuss the philosophy and the plot using the two timelines, so it can be a little bit more to try to pay attention to.
And she doesn't do it. The Dispossessed is all from the same point of view, and like it takes you several paragraphs every time, like when I'm reading in print, to be like, oh, which timeline am I in? And I think just an audiobook is just longer. Anyway.
I also love The Dispossessed, by the way. I'm just saying.
I thought it was well done there too. Yeah. I agree.
Let's talk about something else that I had forgotten until I revisited my notes, which is because what I remember about this novel are the broader philosophical implications, down the road, and the plot sticks with you. But there is so much interesting science fiction jammed in here.
There was a bunch I loved. So, it's revealed pretty early, so we can just like talk about this. But so they at the beginning, when they're getting these radio transmissions, they're coming at these weird intervals and they can't figure out like why they're getting into this weird interval. And then as they get close to Rakhat, they realize that it's because Rakhat has no ionosphere. So there's nothing to reflect there's nothing in the atmosphere to reflect radio waves. So what they're doing to be able to have big transmission ranges for their radio towers is they're pointing them at the moon and of the planet. And so what they're getting is the signals that are missing the moon and going past and getting, so they pick up the signal when Earth is like in a line between the planet and the moon. And that was just such a cool idea. I'd never thought about how our atmosphere impacts radio signals. It was just fun.
I also loved to extend the idea. I love the idea of getting music as the transmission from Rakhat, because the idea of hearing that just has a cascading effect of what the implications are, right? Versus, hey, this signal's a little hinky. It's got to be made by an intelligence because of X, Y, and Z. If you're hearing music, you know a million things just from the fact that you're hearing music from the system. You know that they have,
and maybe you make some assumptions that you shouldn't.
right, and there's that too. But you understand that they're intelligent. They also enjoy sound organized through time. They have the ability to broadcast. They have the ability to.
They make audio. They speak. They make
right.
sounds that you can hear through the atmosphere. Yeah.
Right. There's no need for more examples, but I just think that that's a cool idea of something to receive for the first transmission, because you could juice that for so much just hearing like a couple notes of music.
Yeah, it was cool.
I also thought for a 1996 novel, there was some pretty prescient stuff that the AI, quote, vultures, that are in the book that are AI programs that learn a person's job and then take it. They are used asteroids as spaceships, which is a very cool idea.
It is cool. I loved it. The more I think about it, the more I think it's totally nonsense, but I still think it's fun.
Yeah, okay. The vultures one's the prescient one.
Well, just like a meteorite, like relying on your spacecraft to be just like random rock is like so, the variance on that is so high. It's just like a very irresponsible way to try to travel interstellarly, but it was cool.
Yeah. I also was introduced to the principle of mediocrity here, which is something that appeals to my sentiments.
What's the principle of mediocrity?
The idea that DNA is a very easy molecule to make, so mathematically there has to be DNA elsewhere in the universe. I'm not sure that it necessarily has to happen at Alpha Centauri and make mammalian creatures. That's maybe, one of the more fun suspensions of disbelief in the book. But I just really, I like that idea. It really appeals to me.
For sure. Anything else you want to do pre-spoilers? I feel like we should get to the hook.
There's one more thing I didn't want to. I just wrote C on the notes because I didn't want to ruin it for you. But I compiled the notes for this episode, and Brent sent me his 40, 45 bullet points. That are all the things, and then I go through them. And about bullet point 3 it was man, she's really getting Cleveland right. She must be from Cleveland. Yeah. And then I loved the arc of your note plot there. And then in bullet point 42, it was like, oh, she's from Cleveland. And I loved reading that sequentially, the realization timeline of.
Yeah, for sure. She just got that feeling of what Cleveland feels like. And I was like, there's no way you can know that without having spent a lot of time there. And then, I specifically read, after I finished the book, I went to the author flap the back. I was like, I gotta know. Yeah.
I just loved that. All right. Well, I don't really think, there's a lot of spoilers in this book. So let's do books to recommend and then some post spoilers. Brent, you want to go? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go first. This is a cheater one. And the first recommendation is Children of God, which is the sequel to The Sparrow. And it wraps up its,
They go back to Rakhat.
A duology, whatever you call that. 2-book banger. And I liked it too. I didn't like it quite as much as The Sparrow, but it does answer a lot of questions and possible inconsistencies in the first novel, and it was enjoyable. I liked it.
Do you recommend it? Should I read it?
Yes.
I haven't read it yet. I should?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
What's next?
I'm gonna go
Wild
for
one, left field.
Okay. I'm gonna go for Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Let's go.
Which is not a science fiction novel at all. But it's a book about an extremely religious Catholic town in Latin America. And they tell you at the very beginning that this guy's going to get killed. The whole time. And in fact, everyone in the book also knows, because this guy tells everyone in town that he's going to kill this other guy. And nobody fucking does anything about it. He still just gets killed. And it's a wild book about religion and family and fate. And it just actually has a lot in parallel with this book. despite the fact that they're wildly different genres. So
Yeah,
anyway, yeah.
as the best book we could think of that does the tell you the end at the beginning thing well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Marquez is
honestly,
the best.
And Marquez is just like a genius. Like, it's not even
Too
fair.
good.
It's not fair to, like, it's not fair to the Sparrow kind of to put them in the same, like, it's just so good. Anyway, you should read it. It's very short. Everyone should read that book. Anyway,
Yes.
Okay.
More science fiction. I'll bring it back. Neil Stephenson's Anathema, which is not as page-turny, let's say, as the Sparrow, but about monks on a different planet who are... it's a lot about language and philosophy and the philosophies of language. And if you're looking for something to just really make you think and introduce you to a lot of new ideas, that's the book. It's long and it's got plenty of them.
Okay, next we're going to do Canticle for Leibowitz, which we also have an episode about. You should go check out. It's one of our first episodes. It's an amazing book about monks, but it's like a post-apocalyptic book. The world's been destroyed in nuclear fire, and are they Jesuits in that, or are they just like Jesuit feeling? I don't think they say the word Jesuit. Anyway,
they're Jesuits. That's the whole point. It's because the Jesuits in the Middle Ages protected written work, and so he impose that in the future.
Yeah. So it's about a bunch of Jesuits protecting knowledge after the nuclear apocalypse. And it's like very bleak. It's like a great book written soon after World War II about the dangers of nuclear weapons. And it's also like extremely funny. It's an extraordinary book. It's great.
It is. Also, it's one that we took off the list. So you get 5 recommendations today because Brent did one that we weren't going to do.
I did?
Yes, because the last one is Contact by Carl Sagan.
Oh, that's true.
Which is a really obvious. I mean, First Contact. They even use the same damn telescope. They're in Arecibo in both books.
Neither author predicted that Arecibo was going to fall into the jungle. Those knuckleheads.
Yeah.
Anyway. Also, that's
First
tragic.
Contact, X Theology collab, plus one of our favorite books. So can't.
Our number
bring it up
one.
Enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we spoil the Sparrow?
For sure. So, all right, the whole time everybody dies. Here's how. Some of them get sick. They're not exactly sure why, but it might be because they're just willy-nilly eating native flora and fauna with no testing. They're being total idiots about it. Anyway, and some of them die. Then the rest, though, the big twist is that they... the first group they're visiting, they call the Runa, and they're mammalian species, whatever, but they're like super chill. And then this guy shows up and he's like the village boss, and he's a different species actually, and he's a predator. And they still don't put the pieces together. But soon after that, eventually, they get to go to the main city, blah, blah, blah. They come back. They realize that the predators, there's like a predator-prey dynamic happening here, and the predator species rules the planet despite having a much smaller population. And they do this with like, if there's too many of the prey species, they literally show up to the village and like demand their children and eat them. They show up to do that, and our heroes are like, no, you can't do that. And the predators are like, okay. And then they kill them and also eat them. So that's how they all die. And Emilio, our main character, the whole time we're told that the UN mission, another mission shows up sent by the
Amelia is
rest of the world.
the only survivor.
Yeah, he's our survivor in the future timeline. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Of that first Jesuit mission.
Yeah, and the whole book we're told that when the UN mission showed up, they found him being a prostitute in a whorehouse. Finally, at the end, he admits to the rest of the group, but also to himself, that he was actually like taken prisoner and like repeatedly raped in a horrible sex dungeon harem situation, and by these predators as well. And yeah, it's just like a brutal ending. It's extremely terrible. It's like very graphic. That's why the sexual assault trigger warning is there.
He's committed himself to the guy that they meet when they first land, the first Jana Atta, and had a surgery done to.
Oh God, I forgot the hands.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. And he's had a surgery done that elongates his fingers and his finger bones and makes them useless as hands, which is part of his defenselessness. It's horrifying. And then also he kills the girl he helped raise in the Runa
from the
village.
Nice herbivores village.
Because because she comes through the door of the sex dungeon.
That part made me. This is the one where I was like, this is ridiculous. But anyway,
okay,
yes,
but I'm bringing it up because it's an important part of the summary.
It is an important part of the story.
The novel is a tragedy, and it's also something we're going to talk about. So I felt like the people needed all the facts, you know?
Yes. Okay, so
let's go straight for suspension of disbelief.
Okay, yeah. So there are
this was the thing that we were talking about that was like a really wild divide on the Discord. A lot of people talking about what took them out of the book. Other people saying, I actually loved that about the book. And then other people saying different things that took them out the book. But this was the ending was the biggest part. Him killing the girl at the end of the book.
Yeah, him killing the girl and the way that the whole rest of the crew died when they showed up to like cull the younglings. Like the whole book, we're told, especially this woman Sophia, is like extremely smart. She's like the smartest person ever, so brilliant. And then when the predators show up to cull first of all, they don't figure out this predator-prey dynamic earlier. But second of all, when the predators show up to cull them, she, like, while she is unarmed, approaches these armed 9-foot tall guys with claws and is like, no, we won't let them take the babies. And it's like, I don't know, if you're going to try to start a rebellion, like that's the dumbest possible way to do it. I don't know. It just, that didn't hit me as much as that's a very emotional situation. I can understand that you would miscalculate. Like, killing the girl at the end was harder for me. But yeah, I feel like those are the two things that people on the Discord brought up where it was like, oh, that was like a little hard to believe. That's how that went.
Yeah. And my rebuttal to that is sidesteppy, cowardly. I don't know how to, but I think people just in general suspend their disbelief when they enjoy a book and don't when they don't. And somewhere in the middle, if you think the novel's okay or whatever, I think that there are parts like that section you're talking about, the revolt thing, kind of, I had those thoughts, but I said, oh, I guess that's just not how it happened, and moved on. I just don't care. So sometimes it's like I can suspend. I can be taken out of it for a second. But
too, the one with the girl. So what we get told with the girl.
The girl is
he's in this
believable to me.
Really? Oh, it's interesting. Okay, so here's the details. Reader, you can decide. So he's in this sex dungeon. He's been raped a bunch of times. He's like, and we're told he's like, okay, I've had enough. The next person who comes through this door, I'm gonna try to kill them, regardless of who it is. They'll probably kill me, but like I don't care. And then the door opens, and it's this little girl.
The girl has led the next expedition of humans to come save him.
Yeah. And we're supposed to believe that he like runs into her so hard that he kills her. And like, I guess, Cody, let me put it to you this way. Like, imagine that you are like in this horrible situation. You've been raped, whatever. And you're like running toward the door, and the door opens, and like your daughter walks through the door. Do you think that you would be incapable of stopping yourself from hitting your daughter so hard that you would kill her? Like, no, of course you would be able to. Like, you might run into them, but you're not going to kill them.
Okay,
like, it's again, like, it was. I was just like, she died.
I feel like it was just like splitting hairs. Like, again, I didn't even think about the implications. I just took the text at face value, and it made sense to me. Like, the idea that he's so emaciated, completely gone insane, has no faith left in God, even though he's been a priest, and actually even either hates God or he doesn't even believe he's real anymore, and it kind of equates to the same thing for Sandoz. His mind is completely broken, and he rushes a girl in a small, or he rushes the next person in a small dark room. He has to muster up that energy to do that because he's so weak to begin with. So he's already committed, and maybe he can't even see. I don't know, or he's blinded by the light coming in from the door. I feel like I could come up with just as many reasons to justify it as to say it wasn't believable. So that's my point about it being like,
I hear what you're saying. So I think about it a little bit differently. Like, part of what I like about science fiction is when there's a future world that I can like, that I'm like, oh wow, maybe the future could be like this. And it's not like that the future, they never predict everything about the future or whatever, but it's just like some idea. Like, there's a bunch of things science fiction does. This is not the only thing, but one of the things I really like about it is like, oh, here's a potential future that seems like it could be real to me. Like, let's think about what the future really might be like. And I think part of what's valuable about that is like, if we can think about things that might happen in the future before they happen, we can like avoid making mistakes, basically. If we can like play out like, oh, here's what some technology could do, like maybe we won't misuse it in some way. So I tend to be like, it's the thing I've noticed with myself reading sci-fi a lot is like when my disbelief is like too thrown off, it like does pull me out. So I hear you that like you're more willing to suspend disbelief when you're deeply engrossed, but also I don't think that's like categorically true. It's not like in a book I like, the author can do anything they want. You know what I mean? It's like part of the reason that I like the book is because it doesn't feel like the author's like breaking the rules. So,
which I guess is a nice segue into the idea of another thing.
Wait, is that how you say that?
Segue?
It's not segue.
Maybe it's like French and
I thought you were about
English?
to Latin me again. Okay, hold on. I'm keep making your point. I'm going to the tapes.
Or Sieg only for music. Oh, I don't know.
Ooh.
You tell me. What do we got?
Okay, I don't know how to. No, segue. Yeah, segue.
Wow. I guess I've just heard
I
it
got
for
one.
Sieg and music.
I want one from the. Who do I call?
For the wall.
Yeah, exactly. I finally got one.
You call me and I congratulate you. You beat me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You earned it.
Okay.
So my defeat is a great sieg into the moral aspect we were talking about a lot on the book club. It's a really interesting, the Sparrow, a morality tale, and one specific aspect of that is the Runa versus the Janata. It's so interesting to see two sentient life forms that live together and communicate together and even trade together. They can speak to one another, who have a set of laws.
Yeah, who have a predator prey dynamic. Yeah.
But they have a social code that regulates it. And it was there's a lot of fascinating discussion about it, and I believe one of the things I loved was Moon T pointed out, like, well, if you look at humans now versus humans of the past, we can have much different moral codes, and it's not like we're different species even.
For sure. Whereas Garland and I are both like, oh, well, we'd like fail the prime directive test on this one. Like, I look at, like, if I went to Rakhat and I saw that this is what they were doing, I'd be like, oh, well, we're going to fix this. Janata, you're no longer allowed to eat them. They're sentient. If you don't stop, we'll kill you. Like, I would be a terrible Starfleet captain.
You're projecting human morality onto
so yes, that's true. But so what's interesting about this, which I think is so interesting, is like, isn't this like moral relativism? Like, obviously morality is relative and shifts over time in human society, but also I think that's good. And just because these are some other aliens who have different morals, like if they have morals that we like, just because they're aliens, I don't think they get a pass. Like, I don't know. It's like part of what she's doing here is like, there's like an extremely exploitative relationship between the Janata and the Runa, which I think like in our history we've had lots of, and now we all agree is like bad.
And that's the part that's the narrative and if we read a book about alien morality and they're like, they don't speak like us and they don't talk like us. Their morals are totally different. Like, that's not interesting. We're humans. We want to read about human stuff. So that's what makes the plot interesting, is this thing to fight against. That's
They're
why
slaves,
Sophia stands
basically.
up.
Yeah.
Sophia stands up against the Jana Ada. But it does have interesting effects in Children of God, this sequel. Which make it muddy again. So it's a really interesting way to explore that.
For sure. Yeah. It was fun to think about. Yeah. I'm not ready for Starfleet, basically. I don't think I could not meddle. Anyway.
Did you have any other gripes you wanted to talk about?
No, it was great. It was a fun book. It made me think a lot. No, I really quite liked it. It takes a minute to get into it, but like, I'm really, really glad that it came so highly recommended. And I like pushed through those first like 60 pages because there's so much here to love. And like the very end, when he's coming to terms with his faith and what it means to like believe in God and then have like this horrible tragedy happen to you. Like, it just, I don't know. It made me think a lot about stuff I don't think about that much. And I loved it.
His ending was such a good trifecta of like the Jesuit times regular, Catholicism, Christianity, and just belief in God in general times his situation. And that he's not only feeling betrayed by God, but logically he's been betrayed by God too, which offends his scientific sensibilities. And so he just really gets so betrayed. On every level.
Emilio's story and like Emilio's internal, the future timeline where he's back on Earth, seeing him struggle with what has happened to him and his beliefs, like it is a masterwork. Yeah, Mary Doria Russell like just crushed this one. It's like that was like the slow burn. It was always the timeline I didn't want until the end, and then I was like, oh, this is the best timeline.
Yes, and it's so, there's so many things we didn't even have time to talk about. It's just so dense. It's so full of ideas, full of interesting parts, just wonderful characters.
Insanely reckless visitation of alien planets with no regard for biological purity.
But also, isn't that how we might do it?
No, we wouldn't.
We would never make a mistake like that.
No, we might, but we would do it on accident. We'd wear spacesuits, but there'd be germs on our boots because they're hard to kill.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, I appreciate your retcon. Let's talk about more aliens next time on The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey.
Sure.
And thank you again to everybody for joining the book club. It was so enjoyable.
It was so great. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, keep reading, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Later.
Bye.